Okay, so what if we could actually engineer a brand new language from the ground up? I mean, not just to describe reality, but a language that's specifically designed to fundamentally reshape how we perceive it. Well, that's exactly the wild, mind-bending idea we're going to unpack today. And this all hinges on a really powerful truth. Our language isn't just a bunch of labels we slap on things. No, it's more like the operating system for our consciousness. It's the invisible architecture that builds the world we experience every single moment. So just look at this. On the left, you have our everyday reality. The stone fell. It's a fact. It happened over there, separate from us. But then look at the possibility on the right. Awareness manifested the falling of the stone. Whoa. Suddenly, the observer isn't separate at all. You're woven into the event itself. This shift is the key to everything we're talking about. So how do we wrap our heads around this? Well, here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at how our current language can act like a kind of prison. Then we'll get into the fun part, engineering a new perception. We'll break down the 4 key design principles, see how this all connects to modern science, and finally talk about what it means to actually rewire your own reality. All right, let's dive right in with Section 1, the prison of language. We're about to pull back the curtain on the hidden rules of English and see how they actually build the walls of our perception without us even noticing. So the foundation of this prison is something we use all day, every day. Subject-Verb-Object syntax. Think about it. I, the subject, read, the verb, the book, the object. This super simple structure automatically slices the world into pieces. It creates this built-in division between an active doer and a passive external world. Separation is literally baked right into our grammar. And you know, this whole effect actually has a name: linguistic relativity. Now, the idea isn't that language puts your thoughts in a cage. It's more like it paves these really well-worn mental highways. Your native language just makes it way easier for your thoughts to travel down certain paths, leading you to see the world in predictable ways. Here's another way to think about it. Language is the algorithm that our consciousness runs to make sense of all the chaos out there. It sorts everything into a stable reality we can all agree on. But the problem is, our current algorithm is built on this core assumption of separation. It's always running in the background, constantly reinforcing the idea of me over here and the world over there. Okay, so if our current language is a prison, how do we escape? What if we could actually rewrite that core algorithm? You know, build a whole new cognitive operating system, but this time one that's based on connection, not separation. And this leads us to a pretty radical question. Instead of having a language that's great at describing a world full of inert, dead objects, what if we built one from the ground up that assumes consciousness is the primary force that brings everything into existence in the first place? Now, to build a language like that, you can't just wing it. You need a blueprint. And this whole proposal is built on 4 really revolutionary design principles. Each one is designed to completely change how we relate to, well, everything. Okay, so here they are. First, reality becomes a process, not a collection of things. Second, we have to get rid of the isolated ego at the center of the universe. Third, the language itself needs to be a generative tool. And finally, your very state of awareness gets encoded right into the grammar. So let's break down what each of these really means. All right, first up, we get rid of static objects. A tree is no longer a fixed thing. It becomes a verb, a process, treeing. We're essentially swapping out nouns for words that describe the conscious act of observing something. We also ban absolute statements by getting rid of the verb to be. You know, words like is, am, are. This forces you to talk about your personal perception, not some objective, unchanging fact. And here's a perfect example of how that works. In English, we say, the tree is green. That's a statement of absolute fact. But in this new language, it becomes something like, greenness is perceived by me from a tree form. See the difference? It's a report of a personal experience. It recognizes that greenness is a perception, an event happening inside consciousness, not just some property of a dead object. Next up, we decenter the self. So instead of using egocentric directions like to the left of me, we'd use fixed geocentric directions like to the north, which forces you to always be aware of your place in a larger system. Same goes for pronouns. We'd get rid of the simple I and you and replace them with a whole spectrum of words that can describe shared or even merged conscious spaces. And this shift is, well, it's profound. Our standard pronouns, I and you,
just constantly reinforce this idea of an isolated self looking out at a separate world. But this new system, it grammatically weaves you into an interconnected network. The I is no longer fundamentally separate from the whole shebang. Now, this third principle is where it gets really wild. It basically turns language into a generative engine. It's inspired by ancient Sanskrit grammar, and the idea is that there's no fixed dictionary. Instead, you use these raw root sounds and a set of logical rules to build new words completely on the fly. Every word becomes a fresh creation that perfectly reflects a dynamic, unfolding action. And just think about what that does to the very idea of communication. You're no longer just sending information from your brain to mine. It's not a data transfer. Instead, your words act like triggers, awakening a meaning that already exists within a shared field of consciousness. Communication becomes this mutual recognition. The final principle is maybe the most profound of all, encoding your state of awareness directly into the language. Every verb, every single action has to be tagged with how it was perceived. You'd have to specify if something happened while you were awake, or dreaming, or in some other state entirely. This makes awareness itself the primary agent of reality.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking right now. This sounds like a beautiful, but maybe far out philosophical fantasy, right? But what's truly fascinating is how these principles are starting to align with discoveries on the absolute cutting edge of modern science.
For instance, in theoretical physics, you've got cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman. His models propose that space-time isn't fundamental reality. It's more like the desktop interface on your computer. It hides all the complex code running underneath. The real reality, he argues, is this vast network of interacting conscious agents. Well, a process-based language, one built on actions and perceptions, is the perfect tool for describing a reality made of pure informational exchange. And this isn't just an abstract philosophical exercise. This could have a real biological impact. fMRI studies have shown that learning any constructed language, even something like Klingon, physically rewires your brain. It uses the exact same neural machinery as a natural language. So speaking this proposed language, it wouldn't just be about expressing a new idea. It would literally be changing your mind on a physical level. So let's bring this all home. What does this actually mean for us right here, right now? This is way more than just a cool linguistic game. It's a serious proposal for a fundamental upgrade to our cognitive OS.
The ultimate goal here is to use language as a practical tool to bypass the illusion that we are separate from the world around us. It's about shifting our entire experience of existence, from being a detached observer watching a dead universe to being an intimate participant in a living, breathing cognitive force.
So I'll leave you with this thought. We've seen how the invisible architecture of our language shapes literally everything we experience. And that leaves us with a pretty critical question. If your language builds your world, what world will you choose to build next?